Hello, and welcome to another edition of Ask the Professor, a crowd-funded feature in which we answer your questions on topics from economics to political philosophy to the course of history to what terrible thing might be about to happen next to culture, if that's two separate topics, not really sure. All those things that interest us in our efforts to build a good society together.
All right, here's a question from Robert, who's quoting one of your columns from a few weeks ago, and he says, when for decades, that was you saying this, they have peddled deconstructionism, multiculturalism, and moral relativism that deny the very possibility of truth. And Robert's picked this paragraph up, and he says, okay, so it's plain to see that deconstructionism and relativism are self-contradictory and cannot in any way lead to discovery of truth, but how does multiculturalism fit in?
That's an excellent question. And for those of you who do not spend much time in the fever swamps of academia, I should explain that deconstruction is this fancy theory that texts don't really have a fixed meaning and that it's what the reader brings to the text that determines what it says to them, which sounds all fine and good until you realize that if that's the case, then nothing has any meaning. Put any words on the page, people can come and bring anything to it. And what's more, and lethally, the professors who enunciate this theory before their classes would be outraged and would go to court if you took that attitude toward their employment contract.
Right.
Moral relativism, again, who are we to say what is right or wrong? I mean, you see somebody beating a child to death in the street, you know right away what's right and wrong. It's an insult to our intelligence as well as to our morals. So, but where does multiculturalism fit in? I mean, it's one of the badges of a tolerant society, and it has a very powerful good side. We do not scoff at people because they have a different accent, because their cooking is different. And especially if you come as I do from the British Isles, to scoff at other people for their cooking.
Can we laugh at you then?
Is to betray your own ignorance rather than to assert your superiority. And even when people have cultural habits that we think do tend to undermine social cohesion in a good society, we don't react indignantly, scornfully, we don't denounce them or call them dirty names, but we attempt to persuade them that our way of life is better. And this is an attitude that regards cultures as essentially a set of working tools, that a cultural habit is judged by how useful it is, not by where it came from. Anybody can adopt it. You're not told, well, you are this race or this ethnicity, and so you must behave in such and such a way with respect to food or courtship or religion or anything else. But nobody's forbidden from touching it either, this nonsense about cultural appropriation, where if it comes from some other culture and you do it, you're a thief. And that brings me to why hard multiculturalism is a bad thing. Because it essentially says that there is a right way of doing things if you are Estonian. And Estonians must do this because of their genes or something. And nobody else must do it because that would be stealing the Estonians' patrimony. Whereas if the Estonians started to do something that wasn't characteristic of Estonians in the past, this would be betraying their heritage. Of course, people don't normally talk about Estonians. It's amazing how often in the mouths of the progressive and politically correct, this doctrine attaches to people who belong to racial or ethnic groups, particularly if they're not white. However that may be, it's essentially a doctrine that says that there is no such thing as a right way to govern yourself. There is no such thing as a right way to handle questions of war and peace. There's no such thing as a better or worse family structure. It's just different strokes for different folks, and it all dissolves into chaos. We cannot say monogamy is better than polygamy. We may feel that it's unjust to women, but under the hard multicultural doctrine, we are simply not allowed to judge the behavior of people who are not like ourselves. So there is no truth, and everything falls to bits. And this is not just an insult to the intelligence. It also tends to trap people. I mean, many people come to Canada for precisely the reason that life is better here. And life is better here not because the weather is so brilliant.
Not today, it isn't.
Yes, we have a great deal of beautiful wilderness and so on. But fundamentally, it's the cultural habits. It's the idea that we settle our disputes peacefully.
It's freedom.
Yeah, it's freedom. The freedom, liberty under law, not anarchy. And in many parts of the world, the problem is if you try to bring in freedom, people don't have the habit of self-control, without which self-government in the other sense doesn't work. So people come here, they need to figure out how it is that Canadians do things. And they can bring things that are improvements. And if they do, we recognize them. It's not cultural appropriation. It's us being open-minded, intelligent, and adaptable.
Like tacos.
Yeah, all kinds of food, spices.
Right. Not boiling everything to death.
In salt water, I might add,
Ugh.
from painful experience.
Yeah, really.
But the soft multiculturalism in which we respect differences even when we don't agree with them, we're open-minded about the possibility that other people have better ideas, and we see that all people are trying to find the best way to live, and we expect there to be swapping back and forth. But we also say that there's a reason why the West attracts immigrants and other parts of the world don't, and that's that for long, deep historical reasons that have nothing to do with race, we found a better way to do a lot of things. And that stands in sharp contrast to the hard multiculturalism that denies the very existence of right and wrong on fundamental habits from politics to war to respecting the rights of women. So that's where I can see that there's a good kind of multiculturalism, and it's in my kitchen as we speak, but there's also a very bad kind that doesn't just trap people in categories, but by denying the very possibility of truth, reduces conversation to argument and then a fist fight in every way. That is the end result. If there's no such thing as truth, the only thing you can do about your differences is resort to violence over them. That was the core of the Nazi philosophy. Sorry, Godwin's law, here comes Hitler. But it's true. The Nazis were radical relativists, and so if you disagreed with them, they shot you, or gassed you, or otherwise exterminated you. They didn't attempt to refute you because there was no such thing as truth. It was just one race against another, and each race worshipped its own barbaric gods.
The Soviets had something going like that, except not racial.
Yeah, but it's proletarian truth versus bourgeois truth, and you couldn't have an intelligent conversation about it. And Mussolini, early on, someone said to him, the socialists want to know what your program is, and Mussolini said, our program is to break their bones, and the sooner the better. And that lurks behind every denial of truth, including this hard multiculturalism that portrays itself as tolerant, but at its core is vicious and intolerant in the extreme.
All right. Well, I hope
don't mean that in a good way.
No, usually no, when you use those words. All right. So I hope that answers Robert's questions. Folks, if you would like to get in on the fun and ask your question of the professor, there is a URL on your screen. And if you go there, all the details will be explained.
And if you want to support our work, there are Patreon and PayPal buttons on the website. A few dollars a month makes it possible for us to bring you this, the It Happened Todays, the quotations,
and who knows
supports
what
the
all.
Documentary work. All those things that we do rely on you. We literally can't do it without you.
We're like PBS that way, except not so much left wing. All right. Good. Thank you. See you next time.